I swear, the second my sociology professor announced the semester's final assignment, I stopped paying attention. Not because I didn't care, because I already knew it was going to be one of those painfully awkward projects where everyone pretends to be excited while secretly hoping they don't get stuck with someone impossible. Instead of writing another paper, Professor Harrison said, pacing in front of the lecture hall, "You'll be completing a relationship dynamics project." The room immediately filled with groans. Someone behind me muttered, "I'd rather write 20 pages." A few people laughed. Professor Harrison only smiled wider. I expected that reaction. He waited until everyone quieted down before continuing. "You'll be working in pairs. Over the next 3 weeks, you'll analyze communication, conflict resolution, trust building, and emotional vulnerability." That sounded normal enough. Then he added the part that ruined my life. "You'll be role-playing as a couple." The entire classroom exploded. No way. Seriously? You're kidding. Professor Harrison wasn't kidding. You'll remain in character during your presentations, complete several guided exercises together outside of class, and submit a joint reflection about what you learned. I rubbed my forehead. This was going to be awful. Not because of the assignment, because there was exactly one person in that room I absolutely could not be paired with: Colin. I'd had a crush on Colin since the beginning of sophomore year, almost 18 months, not that anyone knew. I'd become pretty good at hiding it. Colin was one of those guys everyone naturally gravitated toward. Friendly without trying, confident without being arrogant. The kind of person professors remembered because he actually participated in discussions instead of staring at his laptop like the rest of us. He wasn't loud. He didn't need to be. He had messy brown hair that somehow always looked intentional, warm hazel eyes, and this stupid smile that made me completely forget how conversations worked. We weren't strangers. Actually, that was probably the problem. We'd worked together in study groups, shared notes, grabbed coffee after class a couple of times with mutual friends. Enough that he knew my name. Enough that he'd wave whenever he saw me around campus. Not enough that he knew every single time he smiled at me, I spent the rest of the day replaying it in my head. I had accepted reality months ago. He was probably straight, definitely out of my league, and almost certainly never going to see me as anything besides another classmate, which was fine. Mostly. Professor Harrison picked up a stack of papers. I've already assigned partners. Of course he had. He started reading names. Ethan and Maya. Lucas and Hannah. Brandon and Elise. Every new pair felt like another chance to escape disaster. Then, Finn. My stomach tightened. And Colin. Silence. Just for a second. Then someone whistled. Another guy near the back laughed. "Good luck, boys." Heat rushed into my face so quickly, I thought I might actually pass out. No. No, no, no. Across the lecture hall, Colin looked up from his notebook. His eyes found mine almost immediately. Then he smiled. Not a huge smile. Just the same relaxed one he always had. "Looks like we're partners," he called. I somehow managed to nod. Yeah. That single word almost came out as a squeak. Fantastic. Professor Harrison kept talking, completely unaware that my brain had stopped functioning. "You'll receive your scenario packets after class?" Great. Because pretending to date my actual crush for 3 weeks sounded incredibly healthy for my emotional stability. The lecture ended 20 minutes later. I stayed seated longer than everyone else, hoping I could disappear before Colin reached me. No such luck. A backpack landed on the desk beside mine. "You trying to escape already?" I looked up. Colin. Close enough that I caught the clean scent of his cologne. Close enough that I immediately forgot what I was doing. I hesitated. Thinking. He laughed. "That's dangerous." For me or you? Probably both. Why did he have to be so easy to talk to? Professor Harrison walked over carrying 2 folders. Finn, Colin. He handed one to each of us. I paired you intentionally. My heart skipped. Did he? No, surely not. You've both contributed thoughtful observations all semester, Harrison continued. I think you'll challenge each other in interesting ways. I exhaled silently. Thank God. Colin opened the folder immediately. Oh no. What? He turned it toward me. Case Study 4. Long-term partners facing growing emotional distance after one partner begins hiding important feelings from the other. We stared at it together, then at each other, then back at the paper. Colin burst out laughing. We seriously got the relationship counseling one? I think we lost. I think we won. I looked at him. How? He shrugged. It's more interesting than arguing over whose turn it is to do laundry. I couldn't argue with that, mostly because my brain was still stuck on the words long-term partners. Professor Harrison cleared his throat. You'll need to meet outside class several times. Colin nodded. Shouldn't be a problem. You'll also complete communication exercises. Okay. And keep a shared journal. Colin grinned. This keeps getting weirder. Even Professor Harrison laughed. That's the point. The classroom slowly emptied until only a handful of students remained. Colin slipped the folder into his backpack. So? When are we starting? I blinked. Oh. He waited. I mean, very articulate, Finn. I guess whenever you're free? Tonight? Tonight? My heartbeat doubled. Tonight works. Cool. He pulled out his phone. Give me your address again. You've been there before. I know. He smiled. I deleted my old messages. I typed it into his phone anyway. His shoulder brushed mine while we stood there. Completely accidental. Completely harmless? It still made my pulse jump. There. He slipped his phone into his pocket. I'll bring snacks. You don't have to. I know. He grinned again. But fake relationships deserve real snacks. I laughed despite myself. Fair point. He started walking backward toward the door. 7? 7. Don't chicken out. I wasn't planning to. You looked like you were. I always look nervous. I noticed. He said it so casually, like it wasn't a big deal, like noticing little things about me was perfectly normal. Then he waved. See you tonight, Finn. And just like that, he disappeared into the hallway. I stood there for another full minute, staring at the empty doorway, wondering how I was supposed to survive 3 weeks, pretending to date the one guy I'd secretly wanted to date for almost 2 years. Because if spending 2 minutes alone with Colin already made my heart feel like this, I had a feeling this assignment was going to become a lot more complicated than either of us expected. The entire afternoon felt cursed. I cleaned my apartment twice. Then I vacuumed. Then I realized I had vacuumed at the same spot for almost 3 minutes while thinking about Colin sitting on my couch. I changed shirts 4 times. The blue one made me look too pale. The black one looked like I was trying too hard. The gray one somehow made me look exhausted. I finally settled on a plain dark green hoodie and jeans. Normal. Casual? Definitely not. I spent 45 minutes deciding what to wear because my crush is coming over. At exactly 6:58, my phone buzzed. Colin. Outside. My heart immediately started pounding. I opened the apartment door before he even had a chance to knock. There you are, he said with a smile. He was wearing a navy hoodie with the sleeves pushed halfway up his forearms, faded jeans, and carrying 2 grocery bags. You bought half the store? I wasn't sure what fake boyfriends eat. I laughed. I guess we're about to find out. He stepped inside, kicking off his shoes near the door like he'd done it a dozen times before, which, technically, he had. Study groups had ended at my apartment plenty of times, but tonight felt different. Everything felt different. I come bearing peace offerings. He held up one bag. Chips. The second one. Cookies. Then he pulled out a tub of ice cream with dramatic flair. And emergency emotional support. You planned this? I commit to assignments. I can see that. He followed me into the living room and looked around. You moved the bookshelf. I blinked. You noticed? It used to be against that wall. He pointed. Now it's by the window. I stared at him. You remember where my bookshelf used to be? He shrugged like it was obvious. I've been here enough. For some reason, that tiny observation stuck with me. Most people would have never noticed something like that. Colin did. We settled onto opposite ends of the couch. He pulled out the assignment packet. Ready? As I'll ever be. He flipped through the pages. Oh, wow. What? This professor is serious. He handed me one page. Exercise 1. Spend 1 hour discussing how you first met, your favorite shared memories, personal goals, biggest fears, and one thing you've never told your partner before. Remain in character throughout the exercise. I read it twice, then looked at him. So, we're supposed to pretend we've been together for 3 years. Colin leaned back dramatically. I feel like we skipped a few steps. You think? He laughed. Okay. He rubbed his hands together. Let's do this. His expression suddenly became overly serious. Hey, babe. I nearly choked. He immediately burst out laughing. I'm sorry. I wasn't ready. I could tell. He covered his face. This is impossible. I think Professor Harrison enjoys watching people suffer. Oh, absolutely. We spent the next 5 minutes laughing instead of working. Eventually, Colin took a deep breath. Okay. Professional mode. Right. He looked down at the worksheet. Question 1. He cleared his throat dramatically. Do you remember how we met? I played along. Obviously. You almost spilled coffee all over me. I did not. You absolutely did. I bumped into your backpack, which knocked my coffee. Technically, gravity knocked your coffee. I smiled. I forgot how good you are at arguing. He grinned. We've been fake dating 3 years. Right. I've had lots of practice. Somehow, it became easier. Once we committed to the ridiculousness of it, the awkwardness faded. For a while. So, Colin asked, still pretending, what's your favorite memory together? I thought for a second, then answered in character. The weekend at the lake. He nodded thoughtfully. Oh, that was good. I liked when you tried paddleboarding. I did not fall that many times. You fell 6 times. It was windy. There wasn't any wind. There was emotional wind. I laughed so hard I had to set the worksheet down. Emotional wind? I'm sticking with it. The fake memories kept getting more elaborate. Apparently, we'd adopted an imaginary golden retriever named Murphy, taken a disastrous road trip where we got lost for 6 hours, burned Thanksgiving dinner together, argued over whether pineapple belonged on pizza. By the time we reached the halfway point of the worksheet, we were both completely invested. This is actually kind of fun, Colin admitted. I hate that you're right. I usually am. Confident. Accurate. I rolled my eyes. Then we reached the final prompt. Neither of us spoke immediately. Tell your partner one thing you've never admitted before. The room suddenly felt quieter. Colin looked at me. So, I guess we improvise. I nodded. He stayed in character. You first. I swallowed, thinking quickly. I hesitated. always worried that one day you'll realize you deserve someone better. The words surprised even me. They weren't entirely fake. Colin's smile faded just a little. He answered softly, "I don't think I'd ever stop choosing you." Silence. Neither of us moved. For one strange moment. It didn't feel like acting anymore. Then Colin blinked. Wow. Yeah. That got serious fast. It kind of did. He laughed quietly, rubbing the back of his neck. I almost forgot we were pretending. Me too. His eyes stayed on mine a second longer than usual. Then his phone buzzed loudly on the coffee table. The spell broke immediately. He glanced down. My sister? You should answer. He picked up the phone. I'll be right back. He stepped onto my tiny balcony. I wasn't trying to eavesdrop, but the sliding glass door was still cracked open. Yeah? A pause. No, I'm at Finn's apartment. Another pause. Then his sister laughed loudly enough that I could hear it through the phone. Colin groaned. No. It's for class. Another burst of laughter. We're not actually dating. He paused again. No, I don't sound disappointed. My stomach tightened. I looked away before he came back inside. A minute later, he slid the phone into his pocket. My sister is the worst. What happened? She thinks this assignment is secretly an excuse for people to fall in love. I forced a laugh. What did you tell her? That she's watched too many romantic comedies. And she believed you? He smiled to himself. Not even a little. For some reason, neither of us spoke after that. The silence wasn't uncomfortable, just different, like something had shifted ever so slightly. Eventually, Colin picked up the assignment again. We still have one more exercise. What is it? He read the instructions, then looked up. Oh. What? We're supposed to maintain eye contact for 2 uninterrupted minutes while discussing future plans. I stared at him. Professor Harrison is a menace. I think that's officially confirmed. He set a timer on his phone. You ready? No. Me neither. He smiled anyway. Let's do it. He looked directly into my eyes. So, what do you want your life to look like in 10 years? I opened my mouth to answer, then immediately forgot every word I'd ever known. I lasted maybe 5 seconds, not because I couldn't answer the question, because Colin was looking directly at me, not glancing, not casually making conversation, actually looking at me. Finn? You forgot the question already? I laughed, mostly because I needed to break the tension. I got distracted. He smiled. By what? I almost answered honestly. Instead, I said, the timer. He looked down at his phone. We've only been doing this for 12 seconds. 12 very long seconds. I noticed. There was something different about the way he said it. Quieter. Like he was feeling the same strange tension I was. I cleared my throat. Okay? 10 years. I'd like to have a job I actually enjoy. He nodded without looking away. What kind of job? Something that doesn't make Sunday evenings feel depressing. I respect that. And I thought about it. I'd like to have my own place. Bigger than this? Definitely bigger than this. He smiled. What about you? Colin leaned back slightly, though his eyes never left mine. I want to teach. You've mentioned that before? Yeah. My high school history teacher changed my life. I remember. I figured if one person could do that for me. He shrugged. Maybe I could do that for somebody else. I think you'd be good at it. You do? I know you would. He smiled again. Not the playful grin he always wore. A softer one. Thanks. The timer finally beeped. Both of us looked away almost immediately. Colin laughed first. That was weird. A little. I've never realized how hard eye contact actually is. I have. He looked at me curiously. When? Just now. He shook his head, still smiling. Professor Harrison owes us extra credit. We finished the worksheet over the next hour, filling pages with fake relationship details that somehow became increasingly believable. Favorite vacation? A made-up cabin trip? Biggest disagreement? Whether cereal counted as dinner? Who apologized first after arguments? Apparently, I did. I don't think that's accurate, I protested. Colin looked offended. You absolutely apologize first? You've never even seen us argue. I know you? You do? Sure. He leaned back comfortably. You overthink everything? I do not. You absolutely do. I just consider multiple possibilities. That's literally overthinking. I opened my mouth, then closed it again. He laughed. See? I hate when you're right. I know. There it was again. That easy confidence, like spending an entire evening together, was the most natural thing in the world. Around 9:30, we finally finished the last page. Colin stretched his arms over his head. I honestly expected this to be much worse. You enjoyed pretending to date me? The words came out before I could stop them. My heart immediately dropped. Great, fantastic. Nice job, Finn. Colin blinked, then smiled. I enjoyed hanging out with you. A tiny difference, but enough to make me feel embarrassed for asking. Yeah, me too. He gathered the papers into a neat stack. We'll definitely pass. I hope so. He stood, grabbing the empty snack wrappers. I'll throw these away. The trash is under the sink. He disappeared into the kitchen. I leaned back on the couch, trying very hard not to analyze every conversation we'd had, which lasted approximately 8 seconds, because then he came back. You know, he sat down again instead of putting on his shoes. I've actually been meaning to ask you something. My stomach tightened. Okay? Why'd you stop coming to Wednesday game nights? I blinked. Game nights? At Liam's apartment. Oh, I hadn't expected that. I got busy. Colin tilted his head. You disappeared. I still saw everyone in class. That's different. I hesitated. The real reason felt impossible to admit. The truth was simple. Watching Colin flirt with girls at parties wasn't good for my mental health, so I'd quietly stopped going. I just needed a break. He nodded slowly. I thought maybe I'd done something. What? No. Of course not. You sure? Completely. He seemed relieved. Good. Another quiet moment settled between us. Then Colin looked around my apartment. I like it here. I laughed. You've officially become the first person to ever say that. I'm serious. It's tiny. It's cozy. The heater makes weird noises. I know. The upstairs neighbors sound like they're bowling every night. I know. The bathroom light flickers. I know. He smiled. It still feels like you. That caught me off guard. What does that mean? He shrugged. I don't know. It's comfortable. I wasn't sure what to say to that. Luckily, my phone buzzed. A text from my roommate. Running late. Don't wait up. I locked the screen again. Colin glanced toward the kitchen. You hungry? We already ate half the snacks. I mean actual food. I checked the time. I guess. What do you usually order? Chinese. He grinned. Perfect. 20 minutes later, we were sitting on my living room floor eating takeout straight from the containers. The assignment forgotten. Conversation easier than ever. We talked about professors, childhood stories, embarrassing high school moments. At one point, Colin laughed so hard at one of my stories that he nearly dropped his chopsticks. You seriously got locked inside your elementary school? It wasn't my fault. It absolutely was. The janitor forgot I was there. You hid in the library. I was reading. You fell asleep. Maybe. He wiped tears from his eyes. I can't believe that's real. You don't get to judge. Oh? I know about the camping trip. His smile disappeared. Who told you? Liam. He still tells that story? He enjoys your suffering. Colin groaned dramatically. I was 12. You cried because you thought raccoons were bears. They sounded huge. They were eating marshmallows. I didn't know that at the time. I laughed. He pointed his chopsticks at me. This friendship is over. Friendship. The word settled warmly in my chest. Because maybe that was enough. Maybe I'd spent so long wanting something impossible that I'd forgotten how lucky I already was. Colin liked spending time with me. He sought me out after class. He remembered little details about my apartment. Maybe friendship wasn't such a bad thing. Around 11, he finally stood. I should probably head home. Yeah. We walked toward the front door together. He slipped his shoes back on, then paused. This was fun. It was. We should probably practice again before class. We definitely should. He hesitated for a second, then said, almost casually, Want to grab lunch tomorrow? I blinked. Tomorrow? Yeah. We'll call it assignment research. A smile spread across my face before I could stop it. I'd like that. Good. He reached for the doorknob, then looked back at me. Oh. I almost forgot. He pulled something folded from his hoodie pocket. A page from the assignment packet. I accidentally took your copy. I reached for it. Our fingers brushed, just for a second. Neither of us pulled away immediately. We both noticed. I knew, because his eyes flicked down to our hands, then back up to mine. The moment lasted maybe 2 seconds, before Colin quietly cleared his throat and stepped back. See you tomorrow, Finn. See you. I closed the door behind him, then leaned against it, staring at the worksheet still in my hand. At the bottom of the page, in Colin's handwriting, was a note I hadn't seen before. Practice lunch. Noon? Don't be late. And underneath it, a badly drawn smiley face. I couldn't stop smiling back. I got to the campus cafe 10 minutes early. Not because I was eager, because showing up exactly on time somehow felt more suspicious. So naturally, I sat there pretending to scroll through my phone while checking the entrance every 30 seconds. At exactly noon, Colin walked in. He spotted me almost immediately. There you are. I've been here. I know. He set his tray down across from me. I saw you through the window. You could have come in. I wanted to see how long you'd keep pretending not to look at the door. I sighed. Was it obvious? Painfully. He laughed, sliding into the chair. I think you looked up 12 times. It wasn't 12. It was at least 10. I hate that you noticed. I notice a lot. For some reason, that sentence lingered. Before I could think too much about it, he pushed one of the coffees toward me. I remembered your order. I looked down. Large vanilla latte, exactly what I always got. You remembered? You order the same thing every Tuesday and Thursday after our history lecture. I stared at him. You've noticed that? He looked confused by my surprise. Yeah. I mean, we've had class together for over a year. Still. He shrugged. I pay attention. The conversation drifted naturally after that. We talked about classes, summer plans, and a professor who somehow managed to turn every lecture into a 3-hour story about himself. By the time we finished eating, neither of us had mentioned the assignment once. Colin leaned back in his chair. You know? I don't think this counts as assignment research anymore. I smiled. Probably not. I'm okay with that. So am I. He checked his watch. I've got 15 minutes before my next class. I've got an hour. Want to walk? Campus was unusually warm for early spring. Students covered the lawns with blankets and laptops. Music drifted from somewhere near the student center, and every bench seemed occupied. We ended up wandering without any destination. So, Colin said, I've been wondering something. That's dangerous. It is. He smiled. Why history? What? Your major. Oh, I thought about it. My grandfather. What about him? He used to tell me stories. Real ones. Family stories. World War II. The Civil Rights Movement. The moon landing. He made everything feel, I searched for the word, alive. Colin nodded. I get that. What about you? My grandmother. I looked over. Really? She taught history for 40 years. Every Sunday she'd quiz me at dinner. I laughed. Seriously? I never had a chance. So that's why you know random historical facts. Exactly. He bumped my shoulder lightly. I had homework every weekend. The touch was casual, friendly, but my heart still reacted before my brain could. We reached the campus fountain and sat on the edge. Students hurried around us between classes. Colin tossed a penny into the water. You make a wish? I did. What was it? If I tell you, it won't come true. I don't think that's how wishes work. Are you willing to risk it? Fair point. He smiled to himself. Your turn. I don't have a penny. He dug into his pocket, pulled out another one, held it out. Now you do. Our fingers touched as I took it. Again, that tiny accidental contact. Again, neither of us moved immediately. It was becoming noticeable. I cleared my throat. What did you wish for? He leaned back on his hands. I can't tell you. Right. Rules. I tossed my penny into the fountain anyway. What did you wish for? He asked. I can't tell you. He laughed. Fair. A comfortable silence settled between us. The kind that only happened with people who didn't feel the need to fill every second with conversation. Eventually, Colin spoke again. My sister asked about you. I blinked. Me? Yeah. What did you tell her? That you're impossible. I looked offended. I'm impossible? You overthink. You apologize when someone else bumps into you. You say sorry to furniture. I hit my knee. You apologize to the table? It wasn't the table's fault. He laughed so hard a couple walking past looked over. I forgot about that. I wish I had. He wiped at his eyes. I swear, Finn, you're accidentally the funniest person I know. The compliment caught me off guard. I'm not funny. You really are. You just don't realize it. I looked away, smiling despite myself. Thanks. He studied me for a second, then quietly said, You blush a lot. My heart immediately lurched. What? You do? He sounded genuinely curious. I've noticed? Words failed me. When you're embarrassed. When someone compliments you. When you're nervous. His expression softened. It's kind of nice. I looked down at the fountain, because if I looked back at him, I was afraid he'd see exactly why I was blushing. Thankfully, his phone buzzed. He glanced at it and groaned. I've got to go. Class? Unfortunately. He stood, then hesitated. Hey. Yeah? We're meeting at my apartment Saturday to work on the presentation. Okay? My roommate won't be there. I nodded. Sounds good. He smiled. Cool. He took a few steps backward, then called out, And Finn? Yeah? Try not to apologize to any furniture before then. I rolled my eyes. No promises. Saturday came faster than I expected. Colin lived about 15 minutes from campus in a small off-campus apartment he shared with another history major named Evan. When he opened the door, he looked genuinely happy to see me. Right on time. I didn't want to be late. I know. He stepped aside. Come in. His apartment was surprisingly neat. Bookshelves covered one wall. Maps hung above the couch. A record player sat near the window. This feels very. History major? Exactly. He laughed. I'll take that as a compliment. He disappeared into the kitchen. You want coffee? Sure. I wandered around while he made it. There were framed photos on one shelf, family, friends, a beach trip. Then one picture caught my attention. It was from last fall, a group photo after a campus volunteer event. I was in it, standing 3 people away from Colin, smiling at something off camera. You found the evidence? I turned. Colin handed me a mug. You kept this? It was a good day. There were like 40 people there. I know. He took a sip of his coffee. I like that picture. I looked at it again. You remembered this? Of course. Something warm settled in my chest. We sat at his dining table and spread out the assignment papers. For the next hour, we planned our presentation. Who would say what? Where we'd pause? Which examples we'd use? It was surprisingly productive, until Colin read the final instruction. Oh. I looked up. What? He slowly turned the page toward me. Final presentation requirement. Demonstrate a realistic conversation, showing emotional vulnerability without using a script. He looked at me. So, we have to improvise. I sighed. Professor Harrison really wants us to suffer. He definitely does. Colin smiled. But, he leaned forward. I think we'll be okay. Why? Because we've stopped pretending. I frowned. What do you mean? He shrugged. The assignment? At first it felt fake. Now, he smiled a little. It mostly feels like 2 friends talking. For a second, I forgot to breathe. Friends. Maybe that was all this was. Maybe that was all it would ever be. And maybe that was enough. At least, that's what I kept trying to convince myself. The next week passed a lot differently than I expected. Not because the assignment got harder, because Colin somehow became part of my everyday routine. A text in the morning, a joke before class, coffee after lectures. It all happened so naturally that I didn't notice the pattern until Liam pointed it out. We were leaving economics when he caught up beside me. So, I looked over. So? You and Colin. My stomach immediately tightened. What about us? Liam smirked. You've been together every day this week. We're working on a project. Mm-hmm. That's literally true. It is. He nodded dramatically. And the coffee? We study. The lunches? We talk about the assignment. The walk across campus yesterday? I stopped. We're discussing conflict resolution. Liam burst out laughing. Finn. What? I've known you for 2 years. I know when you're making excuses. I wasn't? You absolutely were. I shook my head. We're friends. He looked at me for a long second, then smiled. If that's enough for you. The words stayed with me long after he walked away. Thursday afternoon, Colin texted me. Colin, need your help. I answered immediately. Finn. What happened? 3 dots appeared. Then, meet me in the library. 20 minutes later, I found him sitting alone in one of the private study rooms. He looked up the second I walked in. There you are. You made it sound like an emergency? It kind of is. I sat across from him. What happened? He slid a notebook toward me. I have no idea what Professor Adler wants from this essay. I stared at him. That's the emergency? It counts. I laughed. I thought someone got hurt. My GPA might. I opened the notebook. You've already written 6 pages. Exactly. None of them feel right. I skimmed the first paragraph, then the second, then looked back at him. Colin. What? This is really good. He frowned. You think? I know. He leaned back. I've rewritten the introduction 4 times. Why? Because it doesn't sound smart enough. I smiled. You overthink too. He blinked. I do? A little. I thought that was your thing. It is. But apparently we're both guilty. He laughed quietly. I guess that's fair. We ended up working there for almost 3 hours. Or at least, we were supposed to be working. Somewhere between fixing citations and arguing about historical sources, the conversation wandered. What was your first job? Colin asked. Grocery store. Ouch. Exactly. You? I worked at my uncle's hardware store. You seem like you'd be good at that. I mostly swept floors. I smiled. Still counts. He nodded thoughtfully. My uncle used to say something. What? People remember how you make them feel longer than they'll remember what you sell them. That's actually good advice. Yeah. He repeats it constantly. I looked down at my notes. My grandfather used to say something similar. What? Be the person people are relieved to see. Colin smiled. I like that. I always did too? He was quiet for a second. Then he looked directly at me. I think you already are. My pen stopped moving. What? When people see you, they relax. You listen. You don't judge. You make people comfortable. He shrugged. It's kind of your thing. I wasn't prepared for that. Nobody had ever described me that way before. I don't know what to say. You don't have to. He smiled. I just figured someone should tell you. For the rest of the afternoon, I couldn't stop thinking about it. Friday finally arrived. Presentation day. Every pair sat nervously outside the classroom, waiting for their turn. Some practiced lines. Others stared silently at their notes. Colin dropped into the chair beside me. You nervous? A little. You? He smiled. More excited. Really? I think we're ready. Professor Harrison stepped into the hallway. Finn. Colin. You're first. I looked at Colin. He stood, held out his hand dramatically. Ready, partner? I rolled my eyes, then shook it. Let's survive this. The presentation started exactly the way we'd practiced. Introductions, background, communication styles. Everything flowed easily. Then Professor Harrison interrupted. I'm changing one thing. Both of us looked up. The vulnerability conversation? You may no longer use your prepared scenario. My stomach dropped. We have to improvise? He nodded. That's what real conversations require. The classroom went completely silent. Colin glanced at me, then smiled slightly. We've got this. I hoped he was right. Professor Harrison folded his arms. Begin. For a second, neither of us spoke. Then Colin looked at me the same way he had during that first eye contact exercise. Calm, steady, present. I feel like you've been pulling away. His voice was quiet, natural, like we were actually having the conversation. I answered instinctively. I didn't know if you still needed me. You never asked. I was afraid of the answer. Why? I swallowed, because suddenly, the lines between pretending and reality felt dangerously thin. I thought, I searched for words, that maybe I cared more than you did. The room disappeared. There was only Colin, looking at me, listening. Then he answered, "You don't get to decide how much I care." His words landed harder than they should have, because they didn't sound rehearsed. They sounded honest. Professor Harrison didn't interrupt. Nobody did. Colin continued, "If something matters to me," his eyes never left mine, "I show up. And you've been showing up." The silence afterward felt impossibly heavy. Finally, Professor Harrison smiled. "Excellent. You can stop there." The classroom broke into applause. Actual applause. I blinked. The spell shattered. Colin let out a slow breath beside me. "I think," he laughed softly, "we just survived." We definitely did. Professor Harrison walked over as everyone packed up. "I have one observation." Both of us looked at him. The strongest presentations usually come from pairs who genuinely trust each other. He smiled knowingly. "You two made that look effortless." As we left the classroom, Colin bumped my shoulder. "We should celebrate?" "For passing?" "For surviving." "I'm in." We walked across campus toward our favorite cafe. Neither of us mentioned the conversation. Not once, but every now and then. I'd catch Colin looking at me with that same thoughtful expression he'd had during the presentation, like he was trying to figure something out. And if I was being honest, I was wondering exactly the same thing. Celebrating was supposed to mean coffee. That was the plan. Instead, Colin looked at the crowded cafe, made a face, and turned back to me. Too loud. I looked through the window. Every table was full. Students were practically sitting on the floor. I guess everyone had the same idea. He checked his phone. "I know another place." "Where?" "It's about a 10-minute walk." I followed him across campus without asking any more questions. Eventually, we ended up at a small park tucked behind the art building. There was a food truck parked near the entrance and a handful of picnic tables scattered beneath huge oak trees. "I've never been here," I admitted. "Most people haven't." He smiled. "My sister showed me." We grabbed sandwiches and sat on the grass instead of the benches. The afternoon was warm enough that nobody minded. For a while, we just ate in comfortable silence. Then Colin looked over at me. So? You've been weird since the presentation?" I almost laughed. "I was about to say the same thing about you." He scratched the back of his neck. "Fair." Another quiet moment passed. Finally he sighed. "Can I ask you something?" "You can ask. You don't have to answer." That immediately made me nervous. "Okay. When we were improvising," he hesitated. "That line." "What line?" "I thought maybe I cared more than you did." My stomach dropped. "What about it?" He watched me carefully. It didn't sound fake. I looked down at the sandwich in my hands. "I guess I got into character." "Mm-hmm." His voice was gentle. "And when I said I'd keep showing up," he paused. "That wasn't fake either." I looked up. "What?" He smiled faintly. "I meant that." Neither of us spoke. The breeze moved through the trees above us. Students laughed somewhere across the park. Everything else faded into the background. Colin broke the silence first. "I've really liked spending time with you." "I've liked it too." "I don't think it's just because of the assignment anymore." My heart started racing. I knew exactly where this conversation could be going, which terrified me, because there was still one giant problem. I took a slow breath. Colin? Yeah? I don't want to make things weird. He laughed quietly. I think we're already way past weird. I mean it. So do I. He looked down at the grass. I've been trying to figure something out all week. What? He smiled to himself. Whether I've been looking forward to working on the assignment, his eyes met mine again, or just looking forward to seeing you. I forgot how to breathe. He wasn't joking. There wasn't even the hint of a smile now. Just honesty. Raw, quiet honesty. I think I know the answer. My voice came out barely above a whisper. What is it? You. One word. Simple. Enough to make my chest tighten. I stared at him, because I'd imagined hearing something like that 100 different times. None of those fantasies prepared me for the real thing. The words refused to come. Colin smiled nervously. Okay. That was probably too much? No. I shook my head quickly. No. I laughed once, mostly from disbelief. I've had a crush on you since sophomore year. His eyebrows shot up. What? I wasn't planning on saying it today. I wasn't planning on saying it ever. But apparently, we're being honest now. For 2 full seconds, Colin simply stared at me. Then he started laughing. Not mocking. Not cruel. The kind of laugh that comes from complete surprise. What? I asked. He rubbed a hand across his face. Finn, I spent almost a year convincing myself you only saw me as a friend. I blinked. Seriously? You always seemed so careful around me. I thought maybe you were just polite. I was terrified. He smiled. You were? I've asked Liam 3 separate times if he thought you were dating anyone. My brain completely stopped working. You asked Liam? He refused to answer. That sounds like him. He said I should ask you instead. I laughed. I can't believe this. Neither can I. We looked at each other, then somehow started laughing at exactly the same time. Weeks of awkwardness, months of assumptions, almost 2 years of missed chances, because neither of us had believed the other could possibly feel the same way. When the laughter faded, Colin looked at me again. So. This assignment accidentally became the weirdest matchmaking service ever. I think Professor Harrison deserves partial credit. We are absolutely never telling him that. Agreed? He shifted a little closer, not dramatically, just enough that our shoulders almost touched. I have another question. Okay. This one matters. I nodded. He took a slow breath. When this assignment ends, he hesitated. Do you want us to stop pretending? I smiled before he even finished. I think we stopped pretending a while ago. His smile grew. I was hoping you'd say that. Neither of us rushed anything. Neither of us reached for the other's hand. We just sat there, talking, really talking, about how ridiculous we'd both been, about the moments we'd misunderstood, about all the tiny things we'd noticed without ever saying them out loud. You remembered my coffee order, I said. You remembered my birthday. You noticed I moved my bookshelf. You noticed when I got a haircut. You remembered where I grew up. You remembered I hate mushrooms. Every little thing. Proof that we'd both been paying attention for much longer than either of us admitted. As the sun slowly started sinking lower, Colin stood. Walk you home? I'd like that. Halfway back to my apartment, our hands brushed while we walked. This time, neither of us moved away. Instead, after one hesitant glance in my direction, Colin quietly laced his fingers with mine, like he'd been wanting to do it for a long time. I smiled and gently squeezed his hand He smiled back. Neither of us let go. Walking home while holding Colin's hand felt strangely normal. That surprised me more than anything else. I'd imagined this moment so many times over the last 2 years that I expected fireworks or dramatic music or something equally ridiculous. Instead, it just felt right, comfortable, like we'd somehow skipped past the awkward part without realizing it. Neither of us said much at first. We didn't need to. Every now and then, our hands shifted slightly as we walked, and every single time I caught myself smiling. Colin noticed. "You've been smiling for like 5 minutes." "I know." "You gonna tell me why?" I looked over at him. "I'm happy." His expression softened immediately. "Good. I'm pretty happy too." When we reached my apartment building, we stopped outside the entrance. Neither of us seemed particularly eager to end the afternoon. Colin glanced toward the front door. So, this is usually where people say goodbye." "I've heard that. But," he laughed quietly, "I kind of don't want to yet." "I was hoping you'd say that." He looked relieved. "Want to take a walk instead?" "Again?" "Different direction." I smiled. "Lead the way." We wandered through the neighborhood with no destination. The conversation came easier now than ever before, not because anything had changed overnight, because neither of us was hiding anymore. "So," Colin said, "when exactly did this start?" "My crush?" He nodded. I laughed. "First history seminar." He looked genuinely surprised. "That early?" "You answered a question." "Professor Daniels asked something about the French Revolution." "I remember." "You got excited explaining it. You talked with your hands." He stared at me. "You remember that?" "I remember everything." He smiled in disbelief. "I thought you barely noticed me." "I noticed you too much." He looked down at the sidewalk, laughing softly. "My turn?" I nodded. "First volunteer event?" "The one in the park?" "Yeah." "You stayed after everyone else left?" "Helping clean up?" "You didn't know anyone was watching." I remember thinking. He shrugged. "That's probably the kindest person I've ever met." Heat rushed into my face. "You make me sound better than I am." "I'm telling you exactly what I thought." Neither of us spoke for a moment. Then Colin bumped my shoulder lightly. "So basically, we're both idiots." "Oh, absolutely. Could have saved ourselves about 2 years." "I know." "I almost asked you out last fall?" I stopped walking. "You did?" He nodded. 3 separate times. "What happened?" "I chickened out." I laughed. "I almost told you after the Halloween party." His eyes widened. "No way." "I had an entire speech planned." "What happened?" "You mentioned some girl from your history class." Realization crossed his face. "Emily?" "I assumed you liked her." He groaned. "Emily was asking if I'd tutor her before the midterm." I stared at him. "Seriously?" "Seriously." I covered my face with one hand. "We're actually hopeless. The absolute worst." We both laughed again. That evening, after Colin finally went home, my phone buzzed. "Colin, I forgot to ask something." "Finn." "What?" A few seconds passed. Then, "Can I take you on a real date?" I stared at the screen for almost a full minute, then smiled so hard my face hurt. "Finn, I was wondering how long it would take you." 3 dots appeared immediately. "Is that a yes?" Finn. "Yes." Almost instantly. "Tomorrow?" Finn. "Tomorrow." The next evening, Colin picked me up just before sunset. He wasn't carrying assignment papers this time. No notebooks, no folders, just himself. "You look nice," he said as soon as I opened the door. I immediately looked down at my shirt. It's just a button-up. It still looks nice. I smiled. Thanks. He rubbed the back of his neck. I wasn't sure if flowers were too much. He held out a small bouquet he'd been hiding behind his back. They're probably too much. I looked at them, then at him. No, they're perfect. His nervous smile relaxed. I've literally given presentations to 200 people. He laughed. But this is somehow scarier. I've never seen you nervous before. You are now. That somehow made me feel less nervous too. Dinner was at a small Italian restaurant a few blocks from campus. Nothing fancy. Quiet enough that we could actually talk. Halfway through the meal, Colin looked around the restaurant before leaning toward me. I have a confession. Oh? I almost canceled. I blinked. Why? I kept thinking. He smiled sheepishly. What if this doesn't feel as good as I imagined? And? He reached across the table. Not dramatically, just enough for his fingertips to brush mine. It feels better. I laughed quietly. I was thinking the same thing. After dinner, we walked through downtown. Store windows reflected the evening lights. A street musician played guitar near the square. People wandered past carrying shopping bags and coffee cups. It felt ordinary, in the best possible way. At one crosswalk, Colin looked over at me. So, can I finally stop calling this assignment research? I think that's overdue. He smiled. Good. When the light changed, we crossed together, hand in hand, this time without either of us wondering whether someone might see, because neither of us cared anymore. As we reached the other side of the street, Colin stopped walking. Finn? Yeah? I've been wanting to do something since the day you opened your apartment door for our first practice session. I looked at him curiously. What? He stepped a little closer, slow enough that I had every chance to move away. I didn't. Can I kiss you? I smiled. I was starting to wonder if you'd ever ask. He laughed softly, then leaned in. The kiss was gentle, brief, unhurried. When we pulled apart, we were both smiling. That, Colin said quietly, was worth waiting for. I couldn't have agreed more. The kiss wasn't dramatic. There were no fireworks, no crowd clapping in the background, just a quiet evening, a crosswalk behind us, and the warm feeling of realizing I'd finally stopped imagining what it would be like. It was real. Colin smiled first. So, I've been wanting to do that for a while. How long? He thought about it. Honestly? Since the first night at your apartment. I laughed. The assignment? He nodded. When we were pretending to be together. I kept forgetting we were pretending. I looked at him. I thought I was the only one. No. He shook his head. Definitely not. We continued walking through downtown, neither of us in any hurry to get home. Everything felt lighter now, like we'd finally stopped carrying around months of unnecessary uncertainty. The following Monday was our final class with Professor Harrison. Students chatted while waiting for grades. Some were already talking about summer break. Others looked relieved the semester was almost over. Colin slid into the seat beside me. Morning. Morning. He placed a coffee on my desk. You've started doing that. What? Bringing me coffee. He smiled. I figured I should keep remembering your order. I support this habit. Professor Harrison walked in, carrying a stack of folders. I've finished grading your projects. The room immediately became quiet. He handed them back one pair at a time. When he reached us, he smiled. Excellent work. Colin opened the folder before I could. Across the front page, written in red ink, 98/100 below it, Professor Harrison had left one comment. Outstanding communication. Your presentation felt genuine, thoughtful, and remarkably natural. Colin nudged my shoulder. I'll take 98. So will I. As class ended, Professor Harrison stopped us before we reached the door. Finn. Colin. We turned. I wanted to ask something. Sure, Colin said. Professor Harrison folded his arms. You two seemed unusually comfortable by the end of the project. I felt my face warming immediately. Colin looked suspiciously amused. We got along pretty well. Professor Harrison smiled knowingly. I noticed. There was a brief pause. Then he added, I've been teaching this assignment for 8 years. Oh? I've seen several friendships come out of it. He adjusted the papers in his hands. And a tiny smile appeared. A surprising number of relationships. Colin looked at me. I looked at him. Neither of us managed to hide our smiles. Professor Harrison raised an eyebrow. Should I assume? Colin answered before I could. You'd be assuming correctly. Professor Harrison blinked, then laughed. I had a feeling? He pointed toward the hallway. Now get out of here. I've accidentally played matchmaker enough for 1 semester. Summer arrived faster than either of us expected. Without classes, our excuse for seeing each other disappeared, which turned out not to matter at all, because we saw each other anyway. Coffee became Saturday mornings. Movie nights became almost every Friday. Long walks became our favorite way to end difficult days. There was nothing dramatic about it. Just dozens of small moments that slowly built something real. One afternoon in July, Colin helped me assemble a new bookshelf after I'd moved into a slightly bigger apartment. He looked around once everything was finished. This place suits you. You said that about the last apartment. I know. He smiled. But this one has less haunted plumbing. I'll admit, that's an improvement. He laughed, then glanced toward the empty wall above the couch. You need pictures. I haven't unpacked them yet. I can help. We spent the next hour hanging framed photos, family, friends, college memories. Near the end, Colin found the volunteer event picture from the previous fall. The famous one. I smiled. You still remember? I remember everything. He handed it to me. Put that one in the middle. Why? Because that's where this whole ridiculous story secretly started. I looked at the picture. Back then, we were standing only a few feet apart, completely unaware of where we'd end up. It made me smile. By the time autumn arrived, everyone around us already knew. Liam claimed he'd figured it out before either of us had. I deserve credit, he announced one afternoon. You deserve nothing, Colin replied. I listened to Finn deny having feelings for you for months. I was protecting my dignity. You failed. I know. Everyone laughed, including me, because he wasn't wrong. On the anniversary of our first practice session, Colin showed up at my apartment, carrying the same 3 things he'd brought the first night: a bag of chips, cookies, ice cream. I opened the door, laughing. You planned this. For weeks. He walked inside. I thought we'd recreate our first assignment. No worksheets? No fake relationship. He smiled. Just the real one. We sat on the same couch, shared the same snacks, talked until well after midnight. At one point, I looked over at him. You know what's funny? What? If Professor Harrison had paired us with different people. He nodded slowly. I've thought about that too. We might still be pretending nothing was there? Probably. I leaned against his shoulder. I'm glad he didn't. So am I. He wrapped an arm around me. You know. I still have our assignment folder. I laughed. You kept it? Of course. Why? He grinned. It's technically the reason I got my boyfriend. I rolled my eyes. That's the nerdiest sentence you've ever said? I know. And? I regret absolutely nothing. I smiled. Neither did I. Sometimes people spend years waiting for the perfect moment. Sometimes they never say anything at all. As it turned out, all it took for us was one professor, one impossible assignment, and two guys who had been quietly falling for each other long before either of them found the courage to admit it. And looking back now, getting paired with my crush turned out to be the easiest A I ever earned.